Hi, this is Hector Garcia. I want to show you how to work with PayPal transactions in QuickBooks Pro, Premier, or Enterprise. I will have an entirely different video dedicated to QuickBooks Online. So this one is just for QuickBooks Desktop for Windows, Pro, Premier, or Enterprise. Now, I'm actually going to show you four methods. There's actually four major ways of entering PayPal transaction data into QuickBooks. I'm going to show you the manual data entry mode, which basically means treating PayPal like a bank account and manually enter all the income and all the expenses. There is using the copy and paste function of batch enter that it's only for the accountant edition of QuickBooks, but you can download a CSV file and you can do some copy and paste techniques. So I'll kind of show you that. I'll show you the traditional IAF file, which is super fast but kind of messy, and I'll explain to you why. And then lastly, I'll show you the most efficient, the best way of doing it, which is using bank feeds. And unfortunately, you do have to make the investment into buying a tool called 2QBO Convert Pro. But trust me, it's way worth it. It's under $150, and you can use it for unlimited times or limited accounts. And it's going to be very, very useful. And I'll show you the very end so you can kind of appreciate why I think that's my favorite way. And you can use any of the four techniques. Let me start with manual data entry. So to frame things up, when you go log into PayPal, and usually the homepage of PayPal will look like this, or maybe it would look like classic mode, and I'll show you what either one looks like, and it really depends on how you have it set up in your PayPal account. But it doesn't matter which PayPal account you have, whether it's classic mode or the new modern mode, you're going to have to go into a place where it says history, download history. And then once you click on that, the screen will look like this. And the download history menu gives you a couple of options. One is the date range. Okay, that's the easy one. We're going to download May, for example. And the file type, this is sort of the challenging one. So the only three I'm going to focus in is comma delimited completed payments. And then we're going to look at the Quicken, and we're going to look at PDF all activity. The QuickBooks one could also work, but it doesn't work too well. And that's really the reason why I'm making this video, because the one QuickBooks option is not so good. But we'll cover all of them. So we'll get started with the comma delimited. So I downloaded the file, and I'll show you what that looks like. And typically it looks like a spreadsheet. So since we're going to work on manual data entry, what we would do is we would take this spreadsheet here and we would enter it into a PayPal bank register, sort of like this. So there's my vendor Como, there's the dollar amount. So I would just go into my chart of accounts, for example, make sure that I have a PayPal bank account, and then let me just look at this real quick. That's May 31st. So I would just do regular QuickBooks data entry at this point, right? So May 31st, 15. The vendor is Como. Add as a vendor. 119, don't remember the amount. 97, and then office supplies, right? So that's kind of the point, right? We would just go one by one, transaction by transaction, and we enter it just like it was a register, and then we would reconcile it at the end. Okay, that's kind of tedious. It's not my favorite way of working, especially when the number of transactions are a lot more than what you see on the screen here. So that's the deal with manual data entry. So if you're working with any version of QuickBooks Pro or Premier, and or an older version of Accountant or Enterprise, you don't have much of a choice. What you're going to do is you're going to do manual data entry. Now, later on, I'm going to talk about a conversion tool that allows me to convert some of these transactions into bank feeds that could actually supersede data entry. So I'm going to cover that after the fact. So the second scenario is we're going to batch enter the transactions. With batch enter, this only works with QuickBooks Accountant or QuickBooks Enterprise 2013 or above. And the concept is, instead of manually entering these transactions, we're basically going to copy and paste them into a module called batch enter. Again, you have to have QuickBooks Accountant Edition or Enterprise Edition. So in a nutshell, what we're going to do is we're going to split all the deposits with the payments or the expenses. So we're gonna resort this spreadsheet that we got from PayPal, and we're gonna sort that by, we can just do gross amount, that could work. And basically we're gonna get a group that is all expenses, that will be these, and then we're gonna get a group that is all income or deposits. So I'm gonna go back into QuickBooks, and then that was the accountant menu, batch enter, and I have basically two modes, checks and deposits. If we start with checks, basically that means that we're going to cover expenses. Now, this is a little bit confusing for some people because these are not actual checks, these are expenses coming from PayPal. However, in QuickBooks, the word check basically means money coming out of a bank. And, and PayPal is treated as a bank for these purposes. So we'll start with the checks. Now, notice the pattern here. These columns are set up like this: date, transaction number, payee, account, amount. So we're going to have to make sure that this columns here look very similar than our spreadsheet here. So let's look at the data that we have here. We have date, vendor name, we have the net, which is really the number that we're looking for, and we don't need anything else. So to just simplify things, I'm going to go ahead and delete all the columns I don't need. Then I will just narrow it down to the information that I need. I can get rid of all this stuff. It's not really necessary. It's a lot of extra information, who bought from you, their address, all that stuff. But for importing purposes, we're going to put this information. So there it is, date, name, net, or that's really what it means is amount. So I'm going to go back into QuickBooks and make sure my columns look the same. So we have date, we grab name would be payee, so I'll move that up, and then I'll move amount up. Okay, number, I don't even need that. There's no check numbers, and I'll hit OK. So now that my columns look exactly how my spreadsheet looks, I can come into my spreadsheet and I can copy all this information. Now remember, I'm only focused on the checks here. So I'll copy these, and then I'll come into QuickBooks and come in here and paste it. Okay. Now one of the problems is that I can't paste negative amounts. So I would have to have made sure that none of these are negatives. In Excel, we can do things like this, multiplying something by -1, and that would basically turn the negatives into positives. So I could just copy and paste over these, okay, and that would basically turn that. So there's obviously some cleanup work that has to happen in Excel before we do that. So let me copy these, and remember, I'm just dealing with the checks at this point, right, or all the expenses. So I'll go back and paste this again. Okay, then there's all my amounts. And if the vendors don't exist, I have to make sure that I create all these vendors. So I have to make sure that every one of these vendors, as I just click down, they're created. Perfect. Remember, these are expenses. This is money coming out of my PayPal account. So I'll choose whatever my categories are. Okay, and then obviously this is the accounting portion. Right? I have to make sure that I do this part. Okay, so when I finish selecting all my categories, okay, whatever they happen to be, then I'm gonna go ahead and click on Save Transactions. Now QuickBooks is gonna ask me, hey, are you sure? This really cannot be undone. You wanna do this? And we double check that it is in fact a PayPal account, and we hit yes. Perfect. Now we have to do the other part, which are the deposits or the income. So I'm gonna switch here from checks to deposits. And again, I have to make sure that the columns look the same. So we have date, name, and net. So I'm gonna come here, transaction type, deposits, and then I'm gonna go to customize columns, and it'll be date, name, and then the amount is the net. I'll hit OK. There's my 3 columns, right? I'm gonna go back into my Excel, select only my deposit transactions, right? Which at this point I just remember those were the ones. I'll copy this, go into QuickBooks, paste. Okay. If the customers are not created at this point, remember they're paying me, right? So in theory, all these should be customers. So I'll quick add all these. And then the account will probably be something like consulting income, right? And then I basically have to do the work of make sure I figure out I put the correct category here. Now, one of the challenges here is that I'm importing income from PayPal, but I'm not really separating the fee, which is a problem, right? Because the way that PayPal downloads, there's no fee, or the fee is netted from the transaction. And also, this technique does not work if I create invoices beforehand, because then I'm gonna have an issue because all these invoices are gonna stay open. So this is only useful when the data that's coming from PayPal is gonna be treated basically as cash basis income. So I hit save and close. Okay. And then one of the beauties about this is we treat this just like a bank account. So I'll go banking, reconcile, I'll select here PayPal, and then I know my ending balance of PayPal was zero. I happen to know this. And then I would select basically all these transactions, right? And then I would have to double check, right? I got some duplicates here that can cause obviously some issues, but basically the end goal is to go back into my PayPal here and check transaction by transaction and reconcile these just like a bank. Now, one of the problems here, and it's the primary reason why when I went to reconcile, there's a difference, is because this spreadsheet here, or I'm gonna just undo this a bunch of times so we can sort of get back to this how the spreadsheet looked like. The problem with this spreadsheet is that PayPal does not download bank transfers. Right? It only downloads deposits and income. At least when we download the CSV file, when we download the Excel file. So you're gonna have to get in the PDF version. Okay, and then just give you some context. Let me go back here to my PayPal account. One of the options that I have when I went to download was PDF. So I always download the PDF that looks like this to make sure that it looks like a bank statement and I can follow along. But notice that there's a couple of transactions here. Here, withdraw from bank account, add funds from bank account. These would have to be added manually. Though you can't copy and paste these, unfortunately. So that is the concept of batch entering, but obviously we're missing out the transfer portion. Now, I mentioned earlier that the challenge with that technique is that everything imports fully. However, the main problem is that the bank transfers don't come in. And the logic behind that, a lot of people sort of think, well, you know what, why does PayPal give you an incomplete Excel spreadsheet with transactions? And the reason behind that is because bank transfers, so money going from your bank account into PayPal and so forth, it is assumed that that information is going to be reconciled when you're doing your bank reconciliation, your checking account reconciliation. So they do that to avoid double entry. So it actually is kind of logical that that happens. The next technique is importing the IAF file. So this is sort of the traditional method. PayPal for a very long time has had this IAF file available for download. And the nice thing about it, it actually works in any version of QuickBooks, maybe 2007 and above. So we really don't have to worry too much about the specific version or whether you have a real new one or not. But this is the messiest way to do this, but it is the fastest way to do this. As I mentioned earlier, one of the options here on the PayPal window would be this QuickBooks IAF, which I said earlier that you really shouldn't do that, but I'm going to show you anyway so you have an idea of how this functions. So as I attempt to download the file, the PayPal window is going to ask me, where do I categorize all these transactions? And it's asking me, what is the name of the PayPal account? This is actually asking about the PayPal bank account. Okay, mine happens to be the same name here. And then it says, where do I categorize income and where do I categorize expenses? So these are the default options here, other income and other expenses. So we'll leave those as is because I'll show you kind of how those work. After the file is downloaded, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the File menu, click on Utilities, click on Import, click on IAF file. Then I'm going to go find the file wherever it is that I downloaded it, click on it, and hit Open. Now, I said this is the fastest way because that was just literally 3 clicks. The problem is it's a little bit messy, so I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. When I go into my chart of accounts, and then I go into my PayPal account, I'll double click on my PayPal account, you're going to notice that everything came in. Actually, that's not bad, right? It doesn't look messy at all. There's income coming in, income coming out, right? It looks pretty straightforward. The challenge is that in my chart of accounts, the system actually created a bank account called other expenses and a bank account called other income. So I just have to make sure that I rename this to something like, right, PayPal sales, right? Money that I'm making PayPal sales, and I'll go ahead and put that under income. And then I'll put here, up here, where's my other account that was created? Yeah, this strange one here. And I'll call this one PayPal expenses. Okay, and these are just sort of temporary entries, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. And I'll hit save and close. So the sort of the good things about this option is when I go into PayPal, all the transactions come in. Same as the other options, I don't get the bank transfers, so I'm still missing the bank transfers, which is one of the issues here. But I do get all the monies in and monies out. Now, when I go look at a profit and loss, for example, I'm going to go to look at a profit and loss. One of the problems that I have here is that I have consulting income, I have PayPal expense. Well, ignore consulting income for a second. Let's just take a look at PayPal expenses and PayPal sales. So one of the things I need to do is I need to double click on, and let me just switch this to cash basis. So we're not looking at any open invoices I have there. So what I need to do at this point is maybe PayPal sales, and I'll double click on that. Maybe I'm okay with this. Maybe I'm comfortable with all the monies coming in as with the gross amounts coming in here as a category called PayPal sales. But PayPal expenses, I really can't have a general category. So I'm gonna have to go through each one of these and reclassify them. So I have to go to each one and reclassify them, which is kind of the issue. However, if you are working with the accountant edition, then you know there are other ways to do this quite fast. So if you're working with enterprise or accounting edition, you know there's a real neat way to reclassify. So I'll show you here real quick, just in case you don't know about the batch reclassify tool. But I could actually do them here quite quick. I can select, maybe these three are office supplies, and I can do it a lot faster than one by one. But let's say you don't have the accountant edition and you can't do this. I'll tell you the good thing about the IIF import, and let me just go back into the bank register there. So let me go back into the PayPal bank register. There we go. The good thing I like about this import is that all the vendors can create it. Everything goes into a lump income account and a lump sales account, which I can, very easily change. And then I have to do the renaming. What I like about this is I don't have to sit there and create vendors. What I don't like it is that it creates vendors for me, so it could do a lot of duplication. Plus, it actually doesn't create it on the vendor section. It actually puts it under the other name section. So it's one of the issues that I have. Now, it didn't happen this time around because I already had created all these vendors. But if the vendor doesn't exist, it would put them into other names. So that's kind of the part that I don't like. Let me now show you the option that I really like, my favorite option. So the reason I mentioned this is my favorite technique is for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is because I may have invoices in QuickBooks that maybe I want to match with my PayPal payments instead of having the deposits coming in straight into income. So that's one of the main reasons. The other reason I really like this option is because I love bank feeds. I love online banking, and I love using the bank rules to categorize expenses. Now the challenge is that PayPal cannot export a bank feed. It cannot do a .qbo file, but it can export a Quicken file called a QIF file, which is this one that I'm highlighting here. And I do have to make the investment, right, in getting a conversion tool that can actually go get the QIF file into a .qbo file. So that's one of the most important things here. You have to kind of have that tool. So I'll show you kind of how that works. And the link down here tells you where you can download the trial of the tool. And let me just minimize this for a second and let me run the tool to show you exactly how it works. So just while the tool opens up, I just want to give you some context. What I mean by that Quicken file is in this download history option, I would go and click Quicken. That's what I meant by that. I'm going to download a Quicken file, and then as I mentioned, I'm going to use this tool called to QBO Convert Pro, and I'm going to click on settings here to kind of show you how this works. And then down here, one of the options that it says, separate splits. And this talks about specifically the QIF conversion, and QIF comes with, or the QIF Quicken file comes with detailed information about income and the split. So I have to make sure that this option is selected here. And also down here, I have to kind of give it a bank name. And unfortunately, it's kind of hard to explain, but PayPal is not a banking part of the bank feed system. So I just have to pick a bogus bank account like Chase or something like that. So I'm going to hit OK here. And then I'm going to click on the convert button. And then I'm going to go find my QIF file, which I just downloaded. And there it is. There's the QIF file. You know what? Before I open that, I want to open up the QIF file in Excel, because I like for you to kind of see what the QIF file looks like, so you kind of have an idea of what is the information that's coming from PayPal. So this is the QIF file I downloaded for PayPal. I'm just going to drag it here into Excel, and this is what it looks like. So this is it's kind of gibberish. This is the information that PayPal is sending me via this QIF file. So trust me, all the information that you need is there, and it's not displayed in a really friendly format. However, once I get through the conversion, it's going to work beautifully. So let me go back into my to QBO Convert Pro, which is the tool that I use to convert. Select my QIF file, and then I'm going to click on Convert to QBO. And basically, it's going to create, as I mentioned, a .qbo file. So now I can go into QuickBooks, and here's a blank register, so you get an idea what that looks like. And I go into Banking, Bank Feeds, Import Web Connect. So once I click on that, then I go find that QBO file I just converted. So I'll select that and hit Open. And basically, we're going to get into familiar territory, which is bank feeds. Bank feeds is the traditional way that we get our banks and our credit cards connected into QuickBooks, so things get downloaded. So I'm going to select my PayPal account here, because that .qbo file is it's related to my PayPal account. And then my bank feeds window will open up. And then hopefully, if you've used bank feeds before, this would be real familiar for you. But the huge advantage, I can't say this enough, the huge advantage of this option is that if I happen to have open invoices, so let me just go to my invoices real quick. So let me show you. I got some open invoices here, right? Or maybe I have paid invoices. It doesn't matter. If I use the invoice payment process at all, because I'm managing inventory, or because I initiate my invoices in QuickBooks, not in PayPal, the other techniques that I chose have the major problem that it just creates new income. But the beautiful thing about bank feeds is that, for example, let me just take a look at these deposits here. When you look at these deposits here, and for the event of these last three here, there are invoices involved. So I can actually click on this one, and instead of actually creating more income or new income into our accounting, I can just click on select here, click on add more details, and then I can just select the particular open invoice. And even if the invoice is not open, if there happen to be a payment against it, I can match it. So I'll click on add to QuickBooks. I want to show you a similar example. Let's say that, for example, this one invoice I received here for $299.40, and I'm going to go ahead and show it here. So let me pull up that invoice. There it is. Let's say this invoice has been paid for. So I did go to QuickBooks and I clicked on receive payments. That was actually part of my standard workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and receive it. And it just goes into undeposited funds, right? Just a regular receive payment function here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. But let's say I haven't done the actual bank deposit, but I have received the payment. So one of the great things about working with bank feeds is that once I'm in bank feeds, I can actually click here, and this will actually be able to match to an existing transaction. Sorry, I'm going to click on add more details, but I'm going to be able to match it there. So when I click on add more details, I have my tab for my payments received or my undeposited funds, and I have my tab for open invoices, just like I showed you last time. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, click on add to QuickBooks, and then I'll go ahead and select this one too. And because I actually have an open invoice on that one, whoops, that's the wrong button that I pressed there. I'm going to click on add more details, select the open invoice, and done. So the great thing about bank feeds as well is that even if I don't have everything on invoice, like for example, this one wasn't on an invoice and this one wasn't on an invoice, I can still come in here and put it straight into an income account if I wanted to. So I am actually not completely stuck to have to use invoice, receive payment, and the matching mechanism. I could also just do direct data input. But the single most important piece of bank feeds, it's really expenses and bank rules, because when I actually start classifying these expense accounts, and if you never used bank feeds before, obviously this is new to you. But if you've used this before, the beauty of doing everything through bank feeds is that when I add these, this is going to create rules. So in the future, in June, July, August, whatever, when this vendor show up again, this classification will come in. So this is the really, real nice thing about that. And again, the name of that program is called 2QVO Convert Pro. This is really what it looks like. And I'm going to put here the link, and I'll be sure to put the link down there in the comments if you want to go ahead and check out the trial. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that this was useful for you.